Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. I am so glad you are here with us. We have something really, really intense to look at today.
Yeah, intense is definitely the word for it. It's going to challenge a lot of assumptions.
Totally. Because, okay, what if I told you that the billionaire you despise the most, the one whose name immediately makes your blood boil, the one who seems to operate with just total, absolute impunity,
Hmm.
what if I told you they were actually performing a profound, deeply necessary psychological service for you?
Right. Which is, I mean, it's an incredibly destabilizing thought
It really is.
because we are so accustomed to looking at extreme wealth inequality or structural exploitation
Yeah.
and the failures of our modern institutions through a purely political lens or an economic lens, right?
Right, yeah. Like it's just a glitch in the system.
Exactly. We frame it as a glitch or just the result of a few bad actors who somehow managed to rig the game. But the document we are analyzing today, it basically demands that we abandon that comforting framework entirely.
Yeah, completely throw it out the window. And the text we are diving into is singular. I mean, it's dense, it's highly provocative, and it carries a title that gives you a little hint of the absolute labyrinth we are about to enter.
Oh, the title is quite something.
It really is. It's titled Guardians of the Collective's Shadow Nightmares. Why and how the most high-powerful elite actually are where they are, and what to properly actually do about it. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because the goal today is not to look at, how specific billionaires or politicians got their money or influence.
Hmm.
We aren't doing an audit of offshore bank accounts or tracking lobbying dollars.
No, that's not the point here.
Right. The mission of this deep dive is to answer a far more uncomfortable question that this text poses, which is, what does it say about us that this is how the world is organized?
And I think before we plunge into the actual mechanics of the author's cosmological and psychological arguments, we really need to clearly establish the intellectual framework for this conversation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because this gets touchy.
It does. It touches the third rail of almost every major societal debate right now. It deconstructs wealth inequality, the nature of modern legal systems, the underlying rot of globalized economies. So I want to explicitly clarify to you listening, our purpose here is not to take a political side.
Right. Absolutely not.
We are not here to endorse a specific ideology or, validate the author's worldview as absolute, undisputed fact. We are neutrally and analytically exploring the author's fascinating psychological arguments regarding power dynamics.
We're treating the document like a mirror, basically.
Exactly. Because regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, the reflection this text provides is just impossible to ignore.
So we are your guides through this terrain today. And it begins with a hook that kind of upends everything we think we know about power. The author teases this core concept to the reader. What if extreme wealth and power aren't just the result of a broken system, but a psychological service the elite are providing for you?
And what's fascinating here is that the author argues the elite are literal guardians of our collective shadow. That's the phrase they use.
Literal guardians,
Oh.
which is just wow. And so today we're going to explore Jungian psychology, the biological advantages of ruthlessness, the historical erasure of the sacred feminine, and ultimately, why simply exposing elite crimes never actually changes the world.
It's a massive journey, and to understand why the elite hold power, we really first have to define the psychological material they are allegedly holding for us.
Right, the shadow. Because I feel like we hear the word shadow, and our minds immediately jump to, like, cartoonish villainy or just pure, unadulterated evil.
Right, which is the most common misinterpretation of depth psychology. The concept of the shadow, which was popularized by the Jungian tradition, but honestly, it's present in nearly every serious contemplative framework. It's far more nuanced.
It's not just the dark side.
No, not at all. The shadow is simply the repository of everything a society deems unacceptable. It is the vast collection of human impulses, traits, and energies that a culture ejects from conscious awareness.
Because they threaten the polite social order, basically.
Precisely. It contains genuinely dark impulses, sure, like cruelty and unvarnished greed. But it also contains suppressed natural instincts, things like rage, sexuality, grief, power hunger, the will to refuse, and even just the desire to be exceptional.
I like to think of it, and this is my own analogy here, it's like an emotional landfill for a polite society.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Because if a culture demands that everyone be perfectly cooperative, perfectly restrained, endlessly accommodating, and selfless, all that suppressed competitive and dominating energy has to go somewhere. You can't just delete it.
You absolutely cannot. The physics of the shadow, so to speak, dictate that when a civilization refuses to acknowledge these traits, they don't disappear. They accumulate charge, they concentrate.
It ferments in the landfill. It
Mhm.
generates heat.
Exactly. It builds up this massive volatile charge of psychic energy, and the text points a laser specifically at the post-Enlightenment Western shadow.
Yeah, they get very specific about our current era.
They do. They catalog the immense volume of material we have shoved into this collective landfill. For example, look at the invisible violence required to maintain our current economies.
Oh, man. Yeah. The supply chains.
Right. We enjoy the frictionless delivery of cheap, ubiquitous goods, but we systematically eject the brutal extractive violence of the global supply chain from our day-to-day consciousness.
We just hit order and don't want to know about the factory conditions or the mining.
We push it entirely out of our awareness. And another huge element the text brings up is our suppressed terror of death.
This part really struck me. The idea that this terror drives endless resource hoarding.
Yes. The author argues that because admitting we are terrified, vulnerable creatures is unacceptable in a hyper-rational, forward-looking society, we push that terror into the shadow.
So we accumulate wealth far beyond any personal need just to insulate ourselves.
Exactly. We pretend our economic systems are driven by logic and optimization rather than by a suppressed panic about our own finite existence.
And then there's the whole piece about the physical body.
Right. The profound cultural contempt for the body beneath our rational systems. We idolize abstract intellect and treat the body basically as a vehicle. So all the messy realities of bodily existence get deemed unprofessional and are banished to the shadow.
Okay, so here is my pushback, or at least the question that immediately pops into my head.
Let's hear it.
If we all have this shadow, right?
Huh.
If the collective is dumping all this stuff into the landfill, how does it end up concentrated in the hands of a few billionaires or politicians?
That is the pivotal question.
Because why isn't it just evenly distributed? Why doesn't it just make everyone, I don't know, 10% more ruthless in their daily lives?
That leads directly to the document's most destabilizing concept, which is shadow delegation.
Delegation, so we are giving it to them.
Exactly. The shadow doesn't just float around in the ether. The diffuse mass of ordinary people carry this suppressed, aggressive, acquisitive energy that they cannot consciously integrate. And because they can't act on it without facing severe social or legal consequences.
Like, you can't just seize your neighbor's car without going to jail.
Right. So society actively, albeit unconsciously, recruits people to embody it. We need containers.
Wow. We recruit them?
We do.
Ah.
The wealthy and powerful serve as these containers. They do what the collective secretly desires but won't consciously sanction. They take what they want, they crush the competition, they accumulate without a shred of guilt.
They operate entirely outside the rules. It's like the picture of Dorian Gray, but on a macro societal level.
That is a perfect literary analogy.
Because the collective gets to keep its self-image as polite, moral, and good, right? We get to be the unblemished Dorian. While the elite act out all our suppressed ugliness and greed on the canvas of the global economy, they are the painting in the attic.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the myths we tell ourselves. The idea of a pure meritocracy, or the divine right of kings in the past, or the invisible hand of the market.
Right, these grand narratives.
We don't believe them because they are inherently empirically true. We believe them because they provide cover for this implicit agreement. We let them hoard power so we don't have to look at our own capacity for dominance.
It's an alibi.
Exactly. It's a psychological alibi.
I want you, the listener, to really think about this for a second. Think about the last time you read a headline about a massive corporate scandal.
Oh, this is a great exercise.
Were you just purely 100% angry? Or, if you're really honest, was there a tiny suppressed part of you that marveled at the sheer unapologetic audacity of it?
That secret thrill. That is the signature of shadow delegation.
So, if society unconsciously desires these shadow containers, what are the actual real-world mechanisms that put specific individuals into these roles? Because they don't just magically appear.
No, they don't. And the text provides 4 distinct intersecting mechanisms of capture that explain exactly how they get there.
Okay, let's go through them. Mechanism 1, inherited capital and disposition.
Right. And the author points out that generational wealth isn't just about passing down trust funds. It's the inheritance of a psychological disposition.
The specific phrase from the text that blew my mind was cultural technologies for maintenance.
Yes, that phrase is crucial.
It completely reframes it because it means learning highly specialized skills like image management and patron-client relations. How to buy loyalty, basically.
Exactly. And most importantly, it's an internalized sense of profound entitlement, which society then misreads as natural authority.
Right. We see someone completely detached from the human cost of their decisions, and we think, wow, what a strong leader.
Precisely. Which flows seamlessly into the second mechanism, regulatory capture.
This one is infuriating.
It is. The author outlines the absolute circularity of modern legal architecture. Wealth is deployed to buy political influence. That influence shapes the legal environment. That environment protects and grows the wealth, which then buys more influence.
It's a perfectly sealed loop. And the text lists very specific examples, like tax codes that constantly favor capital over labor.
Or extreme intellectual property monopolies that let corporations hoard patents on essential medicines for decades.
And bankruptcy laws, where, they protect massive, reckless creditors over individual citizens who just had a medical emergency.
The system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to by the shadow delegates.
Which brings us to mechanism 3, information asymmetry. Because you can't have a rigged system if everyone knows exactly how rigged it is.
Exactly. The elite have to own the institutions that produce society's self-understanding. The media, the educational institutions, the cultural centers.
Now, whenever people hear this, they immediately think, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. But the author emphasizes that this isn't a shadowy conspiracy in a smoke-filled room.
Not at all. It's just the predictable structural behavior of people protecting their vested interests.
Right. If you own the printing press, you aren't going to print a manual on how to dismantle your own power. Challenges to the system are predictably framed as naive or dangerous.
And that narrative control is emergent, not plotted. Now, the fourth mechanism is where it gets really dark. Psychopathic advantage.
Oh, man. This part is chilling.
The author explains this concept of pathological systems. Environments like massive corporate hierarchies and hyperspeed financial speculation don't just reward specific skills. They function as evolutionary selection mechanisms.
Okay, wait, let me interject here because I need to clarify this. Are we saying every CEO and every politician is a literal, clinically diagnosed psychopath?
No, absolutely not. And the text is careful about that.
Okay, good. Because that would be kind of reductive.
Very reductive.
Yeah.
But what it does mean is that the system functions as a filter. Over time, systems that reward externalizing harm, like pushing the costs onto workers or the environment, will preferentially advance individuals whose psychological profiles allow them to do so without paralyzing distress.
So it filters out empathy.
Yes. If a highly empathetic person tries to climb that ladder, they will hesitate when asked to make a brutal decision. And in that hesitation, the system ejects them. The individuals at the very top are simply the ones filtered for the capacity to do what the system requires.
Wow. So we've got the inherited disposition, the regulatory capture, the media control, and the psychopathic filter. It's airtight.
It is an airtight architecture.
But this points out a massive contradiction, which the author brings up. If we secretly want the elite to act out our shadow, why are we so obsessed with exposing them?
It's a great question.
Right. Like, we have an entire true crime industry, countless documentaries, endless congressional hearings. If they're just doing the job we hire them for, why do we want to drag them into the light? And why does exposing them rarely fix the system?
To answer that, the text introduces the concept of shadow nightmares.
Nightmares, not just a growing shadow.
Exactly. In psychology, a nightmare isn't just a bad dream. It's an encounter with suppressed material that has gathered so much charge, it actually breaks through the threshold of consciousness and produces sheer terror.
The container breaks.
Yes. The elite are the guardians of these nightmares. Extreme inequality, billionaires launching rockets while people starve. That is our recurring encounter with our own refused content. It's our suppressed violence and unexpressed dominance flashing right before our eyes.
So what does this all mean for us? It means that exposing elite criminality actually threatens the delegation agreement.
It does. Because if we admit the powerful are just criminals acting out our worst impulses, the collected has to ask a terrible question.
Why did we build and maintain the structures that enabled them?
Precisely. Facing our own complicity in the system is vastly more threatening to the ego than the crime itself.
So we sabotage the exposure. That completely explains the modern true crime and expose documentary obsession.
Oh, absolutely.
We consume endless information about elite wrongdoing as a substitute for actual transformation. We get outraged on social media for 2 days, we feel morally superior, the pressure valve releases, and nothing changes.
We mistake diagnosing the illness for taking the cure.
Now, to truly understand how deeply rooted this dynamic is, the text demands we look backwards. Not just decades, but thousands of years backwards, to the cosmological operating system of our civilization.
This is a profound shift in the text. The author introduces the argument about the systematic suppression of the sacred feminine and ancient goddess traditions. Figures like Inanna, Isis, Kali, the Black Madonna.
And I want to explicitly clarify for the listener, the author is very clear that this isn't a modern political argument about gender representation.
No, it is not about getting more women onto corporate boards.
Right. It is a cosmological argument about how we define power and reality itself.
The author contrasts the two frameworks beautifully. The suppressed framework, the sacred feminine, was distributed, relational, and cyclical. It was rooted in the physical body and the earth.
Meaning wisdom and embodiment were totally linked.
Yes. And power was never separated from pair. But the new framework that replaced it is centralized, hierarchical, and linear. It's rooted in transcendence, conquest, and a masculine, singular divine.
It separates power from care.
Completely.
It's like changing the underlying code of an operating system. Once you delete the code that links power to care and embodiment, the system naturally outputs disembodied accumulation, extraction, and a terror of mortality.
The outputs become inevitable, and the text offers a stark warning here. Trying to address elite power without addressing this cosmological root is just pruning branches.
The elite system is just the institutionalized form of this specific suppression.
Exactly. You can't defeat an extractive elite using the very tools of hierarchy and disembodiment that created them in the first place.
So if that ancient cosmological framework was lost, what specific cultural tool did we lose with it? Because the author says we lost a tool that used to keep the shadow from growing out of control.
We lost rites of passage. In intact, traditional cultures, these were not just parties. They were highly structured processes of dissolution, initiation, and reemergence. They were engineered specifically to force a person to confront and integrate their shadow material.
You had to face your own capacity for darkness in a container held by initiated elders.
Yes. But Western civilization basically destroyed its rites of passage.
It's a tragedy, because what remains are just corrupted shells. We have ceremonies that confer membership, like a high school graduation or a corporate promotion or a 21st birthday party.
And the only requirement for that birthday is drinking alcohol.
Right. They grant the privileges of adulthood without demanding any psychological transformation whatsoever.
And the catastrophic result of this is that we have a civilization of uninitiated individuals carrying massive shadow material. We've never been forced to face our own darkness.
Which is exactly why we are so highly susceptible to shadow delegation.
Precisely. People who have genuinely faced their own darkness, who know what they are capable of, they do not need to project it onto a billionaire or a tyrant.
They can hold their own weight.
Exactly.
Okay, so the document has given us this unflinching, brutal diagnosis. But it doesn't leave us in despair. It actually provides a very stringent guide to actual transformation.
It does. It's not a call for theatrical revolution, and it's not a justification for cynical resignation. It is difficult internal and external work.
The author outlines 6 steps. What properly actually doing something looks like. Let's hit the first one.
Step 1 is refuse cure externalization. We must stop locating the problem entirely outside of ourselves.
So no more just blaming the billionaires for everything while we reap the benefits.
Right. We have to see where we outsource our aggression through the products we buy, the politicians we elect, the entertainment we consume. We cannot dismantle a machine while willingly plugging into its power grid.
Which brings us to step 2. Recover your shadow material. And the author shares a really striking tool for this.
It's a brilliant diagnostic tool.
They say, what do you find most reprehensible in the powerful? That is a map to your own shadow.
Yes. Disgust at their greed maps directly to our socially acceptable acquisitiveness. Outrage at their cruelty maps to our own unexpressed, suppressed rage.
The energy is the same even if the scale is different. By integrating that, we drain the battery of the delegation dynamic.
Step 3 moves to the external. Build what cannot be captured.
I love this one.
It's crucial. Instead of fighting the elite in the arena of globalized capital where they make the rules, we must create parallel economic and knowledge systems that don't route through them.
Slow, non-trending work. Localized food sovereignty, mutual aid, creating genuine rival systems of value.
Exactly. Step 4 is restore cosmological continuity.
We have to re-engage with that embodied wisdom and the feminine principle we talked about.
Yes, make those extractive power models conceptually incoherent to the culture. If the Earth is sacred, strip mining isn't just bad business, it's unsinkable.
Step 5 is a warning. Information is not transformation.
We mistake reading leaked documents for systemic change. But integration doesn't happen just by knowing facts. It happens in the physical body, in relationships, in the messy reality of community.
And finally, step 6, the last step, honor the grief.
This one is profound. The culture of endless distraction and relentless progress is actually a massive defense mechanism against immense loss.
We've lost so much. Intact ecosystems, ancestral traditions, deep lineages.
When we push that sorrow into the shadow because we can't bear it. But grieving is an act of resistance. It produces cold, clear clarity, not passivity. It breaks the spell.
Wow. We have taken a massive journey today. From the physics of the Jungian shadow to the structural necessity of the elite as our containers, the erasure of the sacred feminine, and finally, the agonizing but necessary work of integrating our own darkness.
It really is a complete revolution in how we understand power.
And as we close, the author reflects on this concept of the seer, the individual who can see this entire horrific dynamic clearly, without fragmenting into despair.
In traditional cultures, this person had a recognized role. They were a wisdom keeper, an initiator. They guided the rites of passage.
But today, that role is totally vacant.
It is entirely vacant. The system has no use for them.
So I want to turn directly to you, listening right now, for a final, lingering thought. The author says the nightmare is the message, and the message is, wake up.
Wake up and see the machinery.
But let's take it one step further. If you are listening to this, and you can see the machinery of the shadow clearly now, what is your responsibility to the people around you who are still sleepwalking through the nightmare? If society has violently erased its initiators, are you being called to become one in your own life?
That is the ultimate question this text leaves us with.
Thank you so much for joining us on this intense deep dive. Remember, the work of integration starts internally, right now. Take care of yourselves.